Welcome to the Dental Decoders podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Rogars, and I'm here to help you crack the code on all things dental operations. Each week, we dive into topics to help you overcome roadblocks, streamline operations, and reduce team burnout. Whether you're an owner, a practice manager, or a team member, this podcast is for you. Join us for insightful discussions, engaging interviews, and practical tips. So sit back and relax as we crack the code on all things dental operations together. Hello, Decoders, and welcome to this week's episode of the show. This week, I am joined by a very special guest, Miss Stacey Feidt, who is the Training and Development Coordinator at SKF Practice Solutions. This week, we are talking about leadership, we're talking about delegation, we're talking about how to extend a hand to other people in your practice and have a plan in place for who our next leaders are. So it's a really great episode to dig into if you're kind of scratching the surface of what becoming a leader might look like, or if you're playing around with the idea of promoting from within and building out new leadership roles inside your practice. Before we dig into the episode, I want to tell you a little bit about who Stacey is. So Stacey is the Training and Development Coordinator at SKF Practice Solutions, and she brings a wealth of experience from her background as a leader and as a business owner. Her professional journey has instilled a profound belief in empowering others, a principle that aligns seamlessly with SKF's mission to alleviate burnout in dental offices. At SKF, Stacey is excited to infuse her passion for motivation and personal development into enhancing team capabilities and fostering a culture of continuous improvement and gratitude. Outside of work, Stacey is devoted to her 2 children, her 2 grandchildren, and her pet rabbit Sticks, who remind her daily that family is the heart of everything she does. This personal philosophy drives her to support and uplift every member of the SKF family, ensuring that each team member feels valued and empowered. Stacey is a genius at all things open dental, but also just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to leadership and development, which hence her title. Before we dig into this week's episode, I also want to share this week's actually sponsored by SKF Practice Solutions, which is an open dental optimization organization. They help offices reduce team burnout by alleviating redundancies inside their practice management software. You can get a 20% off of their comprehensive software exam by using code Dental Decoders at checkout. We'll drop that link in the show notes for you below. Without further ado, let's dig into this week's episode. Hello, Decoders, and welcome to this week's episode of Dental Decoders Podcast. I am joined by the fantastic Stacey Feidt for today's episode. Hi, Stacey. Welcome to the show.
Hey.
So, Stacey, for our guests who maybe don't know who you are, can I have you just start by telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I can definitely do that. Well, my name is Stacey, like you said. I actually am the Training and Development Coordinator with SKF Practice Solutions. I come from a long history of management. I feel like I started in management with the first job actually I took on. So, yeah.
We'll get into some of that leadership background here in just a minute, but I want to, for maybe the guests who don't know, can you tell me a little bit more about SKF Practice Solutions and even what that is?
I can. What we are is we are a consulting company. So we do go all over the United States and help dental offices really utilize their software to benefit them the best, help them really work smarter, not harder.
And you've been with the organization for a little while now in a training and development coordinator role,
Yes.
Which based on your background seems to make sense. So why don't you tell me a little bit about what the leadership aspect of your career has looked like previously, and how that inspired you to join SKF Practice Solutions in the role you're currently in now.
So you want some history here. Well, I guess, like I said, I've been in a management position, I feel like ever since my first job, honestly, working at the theater in my small town. So I think it really comes down to actually the leaders that I've even had that have inspired me to want to give. That's really what I found after reflecting on my life and what I've done within the roles being in leadership. It was really what I gave others that really made me feel good. Like you have those people where you can coach and develop and train, and they see this up high, this goal they want, and I help them get there. And once they make it there, it's just so rewarding so fulfilling.
What has been the biggest challenge for you in a leadership, just being in leadership in general? What's been the hardest part of that for you?
Well, I mean, aside from the stress that comes with it, I mean, there can be a lot of that. I've overseen many different people, and there's just so many people, everybody's different. So to be able to relate to everyone in a different way to get them where they want to go by really tapping in the different learning ways there are, getting buy-in, like it can be stressful, obviously. And then I am the type of person who I'd love to say I can leave work at home, but there's always just that little bit in me, and all of a sudden I'm sitting on the couch, and then there's like, oh, what about this? So I need to make a note of this. So, I mean, I really feel like that stress that happens. That's the challenge. But again, you overcome that. You keep pushing forward. The other part that was really difficult for me would be those tough conversations that you have to have. There's always that fear behind it, like, how is this person going to respond to this? And how can I really give this information to them so it comes off in a positive manner? Like, again, it's knowing your people and how they react.
And what's a tip that you could give if you were giving someone who is new in the leadership field on how they can get to know their people in a way that is going to benefit their leadership? What's a tip that you would give to a new leader from that aspect?
Well, for me, I find that I have to spend time with them, honestly, like I do. Like, I need to be able to get to know them. I like to be part of the training. I mean, here I am, obviously, but the training piece of it to make sure I'm there to give the tools they need. And then also, there's that friendship that you have to form. I mean, there's always the business versus friends, but I mean, I feel like to get complete buy-in and like to create a strong team, I mean, you've got to have a friendship and the common goal to succeed.
I think culture is such a hot topic and like a buzzword, especially inside the dental industry. Like, what's
Hmm.
your culture? What's your core values? And a lot of people frown on that like friendship type environment inside their work, which seems
Hmm.
really counterintuitive when we're talking about things like culture. So I love that you mentioned that. What is your stance on team building activities? Do you find that like hosting specific team building activities is helpful to the goal of building company culture, or do you find that more so having like one-on-one interactions with the team members is more helpful for building that relationship?
I think both. You have to have both, honestly. You've got to have that one-on-one time with your employee, with your team member, as well as, though, bringing everyone together. All the diversity in the team and bringing that all together is really beneficial. Like, and it also helps when your team members are also understanding each other. Like, that's such a huge piece. Like, if you don't understand what somebody is going through or exactly who they are, how are you going to mesh as a team?
Yeah. So development is part of your title. Part of what you do is team member development. So I want to ask, my brain just shut off in two totally different directions. So I want to ask you two separate questions that are unrelated. One of them is talking about development.
Okay.
But the first question is how, in the instance that you were just talking about, you want to make sure your team understands each other. First question is, how do you handle an instance in the office where maybe two members of your team just don't get along well, but they have to work together? And the second piece I want to ask you is how you decide who your future leaders are and how you can build out a development plan for them. So let's start with the one question about
Yes,
how
please. One
you
at a
handle
time.
team members that maybe don't not that they don't work well together, that they just don't like each other.
Yeah, well, I've definitely had that before. And it's really taking time to speak with both of them is what I found works for me, like one-on-ones with each and kind of get the different feedback, but then also encourage to have a group session together. So we're going to sit down together and let's talk this out. Like, we're all here for the same reason. We have the same goals, right? So let's find that common ground. Let's build the bridge.
And I don't think it's reasonable to expect, and maybe sometimes it happens, but I don't think it's reasonable to expect those two people to ever like sing kumbaya and hang out on the weekends.
Hmm,
But we all have to work together and accomplish our mutual goal, right? So what
right.
happens if you find that those conversations are happening and those team members are still just butting heads, and maybe it's now starting to affect our work performance and our team culture?
Yeah, that's a good one. And in that's the biggest thing I just want to yes, pinpoint that will spread to the team. And we definitely don't want that. And in that case, it comes down to having a more serious conversation and explaining that this is not it. And unfortunately, there are times where you can only coach and train and develop so much. And it comes up that it's the team members' responsibility, to do their part. If they're not going to be part of the solution, we can't have that problem anymore.
I like that. And I like that it is the team members' responsibility. I think so often as the leaders, we put that on ourselves. We make that our burden. Like, this is our responsibility to make sure the company culture is great and make sure our team members are all getting along well. But at the end of the day, you can't be a part of the team if you're fighting your team, and putting that responsibility back on the team member to like get in shape or get off the ship, I think is super valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So now back to my other question that went in the opposite direction. When it comes time to look at your organization, I'm a firm believer in always knowing who your next leader is on the
Oh,
team. We
yes.
don't ever want to have one manager holding the keys to the castle, right? We've all seen that
Mm-hmm.
be an epic hot mess before. So how do you decide who your next in line is, and what does that even look like? Should you have a next in line, I suppose? And how do you decide who that's going to be, and how do you build that out?
Yes, succession planning, if I could speak, is definitely something that has been in my past. And yes, I mean, having that bench, not bench, but having your plan in place, like for moving people up. And honestly, that's part of what I was referencing before, people with goals to advance, to be promoted. And that's was my biggest joy, was to see them make it there. Even after I left one of my positions, which was a big position in Tennessee, like one of the employees got promoted to the store manager there. And it was so awesome to have him reach out after years being like, I made it. So I probably just fell off the whole train track here, but let's
That's
reel it
okay.
back in. I get excited and then I'm like, whoa,
When
squirrel.
two people have ADHD and get in a conversation, that's just how it
Yeah,
goes.
right,
So you just
right.
roll.
So as far as yes, so yes, I definitely believe in having a plan in place for promoting people and to having different spaces filled or different where places to put the aces in their places, really. So, and how do I determine that? Really, it's going to come down to, I want to say performance at work, obviously, but I don't think it's just performance. It's actually showing that will, the drive, like I want more, asking for more, or you can just see it in their behavior, how they interact with others at work. There's just different things that you'll notice. And I mean, I guess I empower people to ask, like, if you want more or something, you have a passion for this that you find, like, let me know. Let's put a plan in place. Let's get you there.
So what happens if someone comes to you and they say, Stacey, I really want to be the next practice manager here, and that's my goal. And it's
Hmm.
someone who doesn't seem like maybe they have practice manager in them. How can we have that conversation? Do we have that conversation? How do we set them up for success, but also
Hmm.
make sure we're not pouring into someone who's just not going, they're just not a manager?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the first thing I guess I would do there would be sitting down with them and really digging into the expectations, your responsibilities. Like, so here they are. Tell me the areas that you feel like you got or you exceed in already. Tell me the areas that you feel like you need more guidance with. I kind of start there. So let's see, let's work this out together. I'd ask more questions, like, and try to put out of my head the fact that I may not think they're the best fit. Let's hear what they have to say. Maybe there's something I can tap into to actually see more of what I'm not seeing.
Well, that I
Hmm.
have had many times in my career as well where people have been like, I want to be the manager. Everybody thinks being the manager is just this glorious, wonderful thing.
Hmm.
It's hard.
Yeah,
It's
no
not as
lie.
great as it's cracked up to be. A lot of times it's because they assume it comes with more money. And I think that that's a conversation that needs to be had too. Like, is this your goal
Oh,
because you want to earn more, or is it your goal because you like to work with people and lead people?
yeah.
What are your thoughts on if somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, I want to be the office manager, but like I don't like working with people." Like, are you able, what is your plan, or how do you address the pivot? Like, maybe we can find a different role for you or put you in a different place that works better for you.
Well, yes. I mean, if somebody comes to me and says that they want to be an office manager, but I don't like people, Well, then, let's try to think of a different area that we can maybe have you oversee or put you, let's find that strength. And again, it all about aces in their places. It's huge. Like finding out the different strengths in people and being able to put them in the roles that are not only going to benefit the business, but them as a person. Like they're going to come out of it feeling like, huh, I did something and I did it good and I've enjoyed it. Like I feel like I've accomplished something great.
So let's talk about actual like the nuts and bolts of it, the actual takeaways that offices can implement. So how would you handle it if you're a practice manager right now, the person sitting next to you at the desk, they're currently a check-in, a patient concierge, whatever you're calling them in your practice, they want to grow with our organization, or maybe they haven't even asked to grow with the organization, but I see a leader in them.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we're going to have the conversation to plan out how they're going to move forward. What types of things should we put into that conversation to make sure that it's an attainable goal and just not like, hey, you should be a manager someday?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think again, I'll go back to what we spoke on before is the fact that we need to come up with the different things that they already can do, like the things that we're going to implement or want them to do in the future, and then kind of take a look at each piece. Like, what do I need to give them? What do they need from me in each aspect? I would say take it step by step. I wouldn't pile on a bunch because that can be overwhelming. Like, so just go through each step, each thing you want to focus on to get them to that next level and go ahead and do the training. Honestly, I'm going to throw out role playing because, I mean, in some cases that's very beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, whatever that person needs to move up. And I think it's great that you pointed out the fact that sometimes people won't reach out. Like, they're showing this incredible, like, motivate. Like, you can see they can be a leader. And, like, yeah, I think it's great that you pulled that out because sometimes I think it is important for you to take the initiative and say, hey, like, I see these things in you, regardless if they're interested or not. Sometimes that can, like, the employee deserves to hear that.
100% agree that they, even if they're not interested, it's good to make sure that they're feeling
Yeah.
valued and
Yeah.
understood inside the practice. And want to, something that I've noticed as we've been talking, we've been using a couple of words very interchangeably, and I don't find that those words are interchangeable at all, and I've been doing it. So but we've talked about manager and we've talked about leader.
Yes.
Now, I find that those two things are not the same thing. In my mind, a manager is the person with the checklist, making sure that the things get done. A leader is the person empowering the team to have their own checklist and do the things. I find that it just my thought on leadership is that it's more so hands-on training the people, whereas a manager is more so making sure the projects are being done. So if you totally disagree with that, that's also fine, but tell me your thoughts on manager versus leader.
I feel like we should make up a new name for leader and manager, one that we can just make one up that pull them together. Because I feel like in my past, like I have been both. Like I have been the girl checking off, making sure this and this and that is done. But part of that role was being the leader and developing, like I was all of it. So when I do talk of manager and leadership, like to me personally, that's the same thing. Like I wear both hats in my positions that I've been in.
So maybe finding a good leadership team is finding a person who can do both manage the day to day
Mm.
and empower the team member. And maybe I have had bad experiences with managers, so I'm just jaded in my thought process on that. um, so, with that being said, outside of making sure that things get done, what makes a good leader?
Well, I think a good leader, for one, positive just pops right into my head. Like being positive, being able to motivate others. Like that's huge. Empowering others. Like I feel like a leader has to be open minded, has to take charge, has to be able to be open to other people's feedback. Yeah, I mean, you definitely gotta have patience. You have to have patience.
Those are the areas that the taking the feedback, I think it's a hard one for me because I just think I know everything. I usually can circle back to it later and be like, you know what, that actually was kind of a good idea. But on the spot, I'm like, okay, sure. And then patience is another one. When I want something done, I want it done right now. So that's another area where I'm working on it.
Yeah. being in a leadership role, or being an owner, whatever it may be, like you do have so many other things going on that it is hard. Like that's part of the stress, to like take the time, or being able to take the time without over adding more on your shoulders. Like in my head it would be like, well, like I can do this like in 2 minutes right now versus taking the 15 minutes to show somebody how to do it. But in the end, I really, really feel that taking that 15 minutes to show it is going to benefit you in the future. Like, because then you've shown that person. Next time it comes up, it's not going to be like you've just given that person another tool to use. So, but I know how the feeling is. Like when you've got 100 things to do and you just don't want to stop for this minute to show them. But I definitely would throw that out there to the universe.
Delegating is it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have another word for it. It's just hard.
Yeah.
So how do you decide? I was gonna go a different direction, but how do you decide what to delegate and when to delegate?
It's going to depend upon, I mean, well, the task, and also the person that you're going to delegate it to, like their skill set. There are going to be certain tasks in the day that you're not going to delegate, that you're going to keep for yourself. There are areas, and maybe they're the areas that we need, or we want somebody to have more experience in. So maybe that's one. Hey, like Sally, like she's doing great with X, Y, and Z. I think that if we give her this task, like it's going to bring more together for her, and we can let her learn and take on a little bit more. I think the biggest piece of delegating, though, that I've found from where I come from is that you can't just delegate and then just leave it. Like, here, Sally, do this. And then just expect Sally to be able to accomplish that on her own for the first time. So that's the big piece, follow up. And making sure, because that's the moment when you first delegate something, especially being a new task, that they're going to learn that task. And if they're just left on their own, they're going to figure out their own way. And then if it's not what you expected, you're going to have that disconnect because the expectations weren't clear, or all the tools weren't given at that given moment.
So I always delegate the things that I don't want to do first, but the idea of delegating to improve the career of the person you're delegating to makes sense too. But I think the expectations thing is huge, and making sure that you're communicating. And one of the things that I'm currently working on is making sure you're communicating those expectations in a way that resonates with the person you're explaining it to. To me, I can explain something so completely clearly, and then the person will come back and be like, "We never talked about that." I'm like, "Ma'am, the heck." So I think that's an important piece of that puzzle too. So
for sure.
We're getting close to the end of our episode today here. Thank you again for jumping on with us. But I want to ask, if people want to work with you, learn more about Open Dental Software, SKF Practice Solutions, all the things, how can they find you to learn more about you?
Yeah, for sure. Well, we have our website, SKF Practice Solutions, so you can definitely check that out. My email address is stacey@skfpracticesolutions.com, STACEY at skfpracticesolutions.com. You can definitely shoot me an email. We'd be happy to hear from anyone and love to help everyone out.
They're also hilarious on social media. I'm not biased at all.
Yeah, I didn't realize with this position that there would be a lot of reels. So, I'm learning a lot.
Welcome to business ownership in 2024.
Yeah.
Okay, Stacey. So as we wrap this episode, we always end with our signature question, which is, in your life and career, what has been your decoding moment or secret code that's allowed you to be successful?
So I think it really just comes down to, I've really grown into the leadership role. Like, it started young, obviously, like I was saying. And for me, it was just, I think a lot of it was, like you kind of mentioned, the letting go of certain things, like, because I was a very, like, this, that, and the other thing, like, it needs to be this way. So to let go of that, I really had to just open up. Let's just say that. I just had to let go of a lot of fear and just go with it. Like, do what felt right, put plans into place and go with it. I'm really just trying to think of a great, it is. It's really just, I think a lot of it is just relaxing, exhaling, and not allowing all that stress to build up on you. And it puts you in a better place to be able to lead others.
Love that. So thank you so much, Stace, again for jumping on this episode. It's been great chatting with you. We'll put your links and everything in the show notes so people can connect with you. Big thank you again to SKF Practice Solutions for sponsoring our episode as well. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you so much for having me, Brittany. It's been great.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Dental Decoders podcast. We hope you took away a valuable piece of information. As always, don't forget to rate, share, and subscribe to help us build our community of dental decoders. We look forward to seeing you for next week's episode.